When the first pictures from episode 1 began showing up in late 1998 and early 1999, actress Natalie Portman was heavily featured. Her casting had been big news back in 1997 when prequel news first started getting announced. The last line of Kenner branded figures to come out in the Power of the Force 2 line were the flashback figures, and the ceremonial Leia featured a flashback to Queen Amidala, wearing a burgundy outfit. Several of the early photos released by Lucasfilm also featured Amidala in this outfit. So when the first wave of Episode 1 figures began showing up, it made sense that Queen Amidala was there in her burgundy outfit, but who was Padme? And where was the more elaborate Queen Amidala we'd seen in trailers, and who was heavily featured in early marketing materials that began to flood the public consciousness as we moved further and further toward the release of Episode 1?
Everybody's so creative.
The elaborate and ornate headdress with her white face paint and regal aura was everywhere, except the 3 3/4 action figure line. This look was used on the Amidala Doll Collection box art, both items priced reasonably, as well as ones priced for more collector-minded adults. But the figure for this look would never be released in Hasbro's Episode 1 action figure line. Despite the fact this look dominated 1999 through 2000. Halloween costumes, fast food meal premiums, Pepsi cans, this look was everywhere. Even people who hadn't seen the movie knew Amidala by this look. So where was the figure? Despite a plethora of different outfits in Episode 1, and a flood of variant figures of Darth Maul, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Qui-Gon Jinn, the Hasbro Episode 1 toy line would only offer Amidala 4 times. 1 in her Padme disguise, 2 in this burgundy outfit, 1 being a variant that was a little bit more action-oriented, and in her Senate gown. But we wouldn't get Padme in her other handmaiden disguise. In fact, in the last 2.5 decades, we still haven't gotten this version of Padme. We did get one of the other handmaidens, Rabe, released in the mid-2000s, wearing the sunburst dress. It wouldn't be until 2001 in The Power of the Jedi that we got this most iconic look for Amidala. This figure, as well as the Queen Decoy Sabe figure and battle outfit, was originally planned for Episode 1 later in 2000. But with Episode 1 figures like Senator Palpatine, Rick O'Lee, Supreme Chancellor Valorum, Boss Nass, Darth Sidious, Gascano, Pit Droid, and many more, clogging the pegs alongside the overabundance of Power of the Force 2 figures that had shipped in 97 and 98, retailers were feeling burned by Episode 1 and Power of the Force 2 in general. Thus, Power of the Jedi was born, and several Episode 1 figures planned were moved over to this line, a line that combined original trilogy and prequel figures. Hasbro would release one more Amidala-related figure in the Power of the Jedi line, the Queen Decoy, not even given her proper name of Sabe, the character played by Keira Knightley in Episode 1. Over the years, the Amidala figures from The Phantom Menace would be released at a trickle, until we finally gotten all of Padme's Episode 1 looks as the Queen. However, it has taken almost 20 years to get all of these figures, and several of them are very dated by today's action figure standards. It would be cool if the vintage collection revisited Padme in her various outfits from episode 1, especially in this day and age when parts and mold reuse is so important to the health of the line. A nicely sculpted Padme in her burgundy outfit and in the handmaiden sunburst gown could result in several army builder figures that would only require different head sculpts. Now let's open a figure.
Damn it.
By today's standard, this Queen Amidala figure is a bit old-fashioned and basic, but for $19.99, the sculpting and paint apps on this figure were top of the line. There are even paint apps on the boots to simulate the mud of the swamps of Naboo. Her articulation is appropriate for a 3 3/4 figure released in 1999, and she has a reasonable resemblance to Natalie Portman in the days before digital scanning actors for their action figure was the norm. Despite the shortcomings of Episode 1's Amidala releases, not having her themed throne room outfit as part of the first or second wave was a huge mistake in my opinion. This is a solid figure and still stands up today. This, like most Episode 1 figures, can still be found on the secondary market at very affordable rates. If you're looking to fill out your Star Wars display and don't have Episode 1 figures, you could easily pick up this Padme Amidala figure without being too out of pocket. All in all, this is a solid figure and I definitely recommend it. What was your favorite Amidala look from Episode 1? Do you still have any of your Episode 1 figures? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smack the like. And if you'd like to see more Star Wars toy history, you should subscribe and set the bell notification. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again in the next one.